Hi everyone. So for the tip of the week this week, I'm going to talk a little bit about time management. It's a very common concern that students have. Not just students. We all struggle with time management. We're in a society where we're all expected to do way more than is humanly possible for one person. So if you struggle with time management, don't feel bad about yourself. It doesn't mean you're lazy. It doesn't even necessarily mean you're disorganized as such. It just means that, like other humans in a society that's putting too many expectations on us, you just can't juggle everything. So one thing to think about is what is your main priority, right? And it's like sometimes some things are going to have to drop, and that's normal, and it's better to be honest about that with yourself and with other people than to build up expectations and then disappoint yourself and other people. So that's not on the paper, but that's just kind of an opening tip that I'm giving you. So I'm putting this one early on in the semester because it's in the student questionnaires. It's one of the top things that people said that they wanted to try to work on. So the first thing that is up here in the document is a link to a page that has tips for time management from Vanier's Learning Commons. And they provide some stuff there. They have a little video presentation. It's about 20 minutes long, so you want to make time for that. See what I did there? And it has some helpful advice from Carrie Clow, who's a professional at Vanier, who works with students, so she gets students, you know? There's some tips on identifying your learning style, which might not look relevant at first, but it is, because if you know your learning style, it's easier to plan your time to take that into account. And there are some other little tools there, like some checklists you can use, grids where you can plan out your whole semester or a week at a time. So I'll just quickly show you what the website looks like here, and I'll move out of the way. And so here's the presentation right here, but they do suggest that before you watch this video that was from an online workshop, I guess, that they did, is that you click on these things here to kind of have them at hand. So I believe they reference them during the presentation. So that's one thing you can do to pick up some tips that could be helpful. I've had professionals from the Learning Commons before come to my classes and work on these things with students directly, so they're very good, and I remember my students found it very helpful, so I think that this is the kind of stuff they're discussing there. I have a few tips I can share with you, so if you want to look at this now or later, I can clarify some of what's here. The first tip that I have for students, and this is a stumbling block I see, and I did this too when I was a student. You look, you're organized, you're looking at all your course outlines and Leia and everywhere where there are due dates, and you're transferring all the due dates into your agenda or your calendar. That is a great first step. But it's just a first step, I'm sorry to say, because what happens is that, if you're just looking at your calendar week by week, then you might not think about that thing that's only written for 2 weeks from now. But that's the date that it needs to be done. It's not the date on which you would need to work on it. So that's the problem with putting due dates just directly into your agenda and then just waiting until they show up, because then by the time you're reminded, it's already due that day. So what I suggest is that you do that, because it's important to remember either, your calendar or your agenda or whatever system you use. But when something is assigned to you, make some time for the steps and put those into your scheduling. So kind of think about the steps to a project. What's the very first step when you have something that you have to work on? I would hope it's reading the instructions. In the name of all the people who, like me, put a lot of effort into creating documents with instructions that have all the information, but that still try to be clear and organized in some way, and now a lot of us are putting together these videos, or we make time in class to talk about these instructions. Please read the instructions and reread them if you need to, because 95% of the questions that we get about assignments, they're already answered in the instructions, and it hurts to do all that work and not have people pay attention to it, okay? So make some time in your schedule to read the instructions. Something's due in 2 weeks. You got the instructions in today's class. Well, okay, in the next few days, I'm gonna plug this into my schedule, read the instructions. Then make some time in your schedule to ask the teacher questions. It can be during that same time block as reading the instructions, right? You're reading them, you're taking some notes, and right away there's something that's confusing in the instructions. You send a Mayo explaining exactly what is confusing to you, what you're having trouble understanding, or make an appointment with them, or whatever. Then think about the steps you're going to need to do based on those instructions. So depending on what it is, if it's a research paper, then you need to schedule in time to actually do the research, go look up your sources. If it's based on the textbook you're using, then make time to do the things that that you need to do. Okay. So think about those steps, and then writing the paper itself, or and on that note, here again, we all struggle with this. We all have a fantasy of how long it's supposed to take us to do something, and it's like we ignore all those other times when that didn't work out. Us humans, man, we don't always learn from our experiences, right? But be honest yourself about how long it usually takes you, not your friends, not the person you wish you were, but who you are right now, which is, an awesome kick-butt person, and you're dealing with whatever it is you have to deal with. How long does it usually take you? Okay? And if you feel like you'd like to someday be somebody who does this stuff faster, that's something you can work on when you're able to. But deal with what you have to work with now. If you are a slower reader than what you would like, well, still give yourself that time, because you'll make it worse for yourself if you say, oh, it usually takes me like 2 hours to read the chapter in the textbook, but I should really only take 1 hour. Realistically, it's not going to happen overnight. Those big changes are long-term projects. So give yourself the 2 hours. Give yourself a bit more time even, okay? So think about that carefully. Be honest with yourself. Okay, and then don't overschedule. So on that same note, give yourself more time to do less stuff. And then if you wind up taking less time, then you can, look at your to-do list, and it's like, oh, gee, I have a half hour left in this time block that I gave myself. Maybe there's a thing I know for sure I can get done in a half hour. Maybe check my Mayos and do a triage and see what's really important that I need to read through. That's another thing. I didn't put it in there, but schedule time to look at your messages so you're not doing it while you're walking somewhere and missing a bunch of details. Plan breaks in your schedule to eat, get water, go for walks. Some of this might repeat what is in Carrie's presentation. I didn't look at it all the way through, but I trust her and her tips, but, sometimes re-emphasis is good. So do give yourself, program breaks, because if you're a workaholic like me, you can go 3-4 hours with, forget to drink some water and go fill your water glass and go pee, okay? Plan social time and alone time in the proportion that you need, right? Some people are more, I don't like these strict categories, but some people get energized by being around people. And I know right now with COVID, it's not really an option to necessarily go hang out with people, but you can reach out to people in other ways, like through Zoom or whatever. It's not the same, or if you're a gamer and you connect to people through gaming, and you get energized by this kind of social energy, then make time for that, because that's going to help you. Okay, if you get more energy in a more introverted way, where you need some alone time, where you don't have to talk to people, and that might be hard, again, with, if you live with other people and you don't have a lot of space to yourself, and there's not, so you can find times maybe during the day before the curfew to go out and take a walk by yourself with your music, or whatever it is that helps you kind of get into yourself and feel human again and feel recharged a little bit. Okay? To figure out if you prefer electronic or written time management tools, or a mix of both. I'm a weirdo and I have my own weird system that's a mix, and I'll share that with you, and you can take what works and take what you need and leave the rest. And now's a good time to experiment with that, and it doesn't mean you're going to stick with the same system for life. I've changed my system multiple times over the years as my way of thinking has changed, my workload has changed, the kinds of things I need to do have changed. So, for a while I was all paper, then I was all electronic, and now I've kind of blended my favorite strategies from each of those things. So just to give you an example of how I do things, is I use Google Calendar. There are problems with privacy with Google, but it's convenient. So, but there are other electronic calendars you can use. I use that for scheduled things like appointments, meetings, classes, because then I have it on my smartphone as well. I have the app, and so I can program my calendar to remind me. So if I'm working on the computer, I'll hear the reminder, or I'll hear it on my phone, whatever. And I also use Google Calendar. You can create an event on there, but you also can create reminders, and I use that feature for things that I need to remember to do that sometime that day. So Friday I need to remember to post an assignment for one of my classes or two of my classes, or I need to remember to confirm the delivery of a grocery store order or something like that. And it doesn't matter what time I do it, or I can put in a reminder, and then again I'll get a notification when it's time to do that. That sort of thing. Backing up my computer, I picked a day of the week that I would always, check. It does, you can set it to do it automatically, but sometimes it doesn't, so go check that kind of thing. I use alarms on my phone for work stretches. So, if I have a big day where I don't have any meetings or classes or anything, and I can just sit and actually get some work done, I know myself, it took a long time, and I'm almost 48, but I've figured it out in the past few years. I am the kind of person that once I get absorbed into it takes me a while to get started, but once I get started, I get absorbed into it, and I forget to breathe and eat and stuff like that, and shake, get up and move my legs around. So I program my alarm to, as I call them, work stretches. It's a special alarm, and I change the time. So I'm starting to get some work done. It's 2:45 in the afternoon. I'm going to put in an hour and a half. Okay. I also, and I didn't put it there, but I will. I think it's important. I mute my notifications on Facebook Messenger, for example, for that time. I go into notifications, and it gives a bunch of options. And because I'm using the alarm on my phone, it gives me the option to turn off notifications until that alarm. It's pretty cool. So that's another strategy, because then it can feel less overwhelming, like, oh my god, I'm going to sit and work for 5 hours. Well, no, I'll work for an hour and a half, take a little break, come back, set another hour or so, That's my paper strategy. I really like, and I'm not trying to market anything to you, but I'm just going to share what I like. I like having flexibility and being able to move pages around, and a traditional paper agenda doesn't do that. But there's an ARC system, A-R-C. They only sell them at Bureau en Gros or Staples, right? And it's kind of like a thing where you can move pages around. So it's like a tiny little binder in a sense, but it doesn't clip. It's just these rings and a special kind of binding. And they have these, regular pages that look like this, but they also have these task pads that are, a smaller size. So I have a section for each of the things that I have to do. So I have a section for my intro to anthropology classes. I have a section for other classes that I teach, one per class. I have a section for other projects that I work on. I have a section for department-related things that at the administrative level. And in each of those sections, I write down what I need to do, and I take notes, and then I'll put a star next to things that are urgent. And then, every few days, I take one of these task pads, and I go through those sections and transfer the urgent things to my main to-do list. It sounds tedious, but I actually find it pretty calming, because it helps me feel like I'm in control, even though, really, are we ever in control? But it really helps me, because then I can see what are the most important things, and then I'll just write it as a smaller note here, but I'll leave the details in the original spot in the section, say, for a class. Then if it says, prepare next week's assignment, then I can go and look at that section and get more details about what I was planning to do. So I find that very helpful, because everything is just kind of organized together. And on one of those little task pads here for the semester, I write down kind of a weekly routine On Sundays, I usually take a couple of hours on Sunday to prepare for my week. That's when I prepare my message of the week to send to students, these tips, and just set up my schedule for the week for bookings to give some times throughout the week where students can book appointments, that kind of thing. And then on Monday, I go by what is actually scheduled that I can't move, like classes or meetings, and then I kind of add other things that I'm gonna want to be doing pretty much on the same day every week. That works for me. So, and I have a separate thing like this for my work life and one for my personal life. Not everybody likes to have that split. I find it helpful because then it avoids overwhelming my personal one with the minute details of my work. So in my personal life one, where I have things like, groceries and bills and administrative things like make medical appointments for me and my son and yada, 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 all those things, time with friends, all this stuff, I'll have, if I have like a weekly schedule in there, well then there'll be times blocked off for work, but then the details are all in my work agenda /log. So, that this is something that works for me, and if there's anything in there that you find useful or that you'd like to know more about, I am a geek about these things. I love talking about notebooks and online software that helps people stay organized and things like that. And if you have anything to share, you can actually comment underneath the YouTube video that you're watching right now, or you can share your tips with me I can share them with the whole class. It can be fun, and then you can get excited about it, and then that's, to me, organizing my week is a motivator for getting stuff done because I feel good about it. It's like, oh yeah, okay. And then I leave myself wiggle room always in case something goes wrong. So that's another thing about time management. So I hope these tips are useful for those of you struggling with time management, and will be another tip next week. I'll come back to ideas about organizing and more specifically in other weekly tips.